Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Alliance Bernstein. Since 2019, employees have impacted our community by giving more than 5,000 hours of volunteerism in Middle Tennessee. AllianceBernstein.com. Alliance Bernstein is not affiliated with National Public Radio.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. There's a labor movement bubbling up in our region, and the baristas at your favorite coffee shops have been at the forefront of pushing it forward. We're seeing this play out at a Starbucks in Knoxville and the popular Three Brothers Coffee here on West End, as workers there have voted to unionize. So, what is behind this labor organizing effort? What are the coffee shop employees asking for? And how could these recent moves affect the future of labor organizing in our region? On this Labor Day holiday, we're bringing you a rebroadcast of our July episode on union efforts in our region. But first, Tennessee has been hit harder than just about any other state with rural hospital closures. In all, 16 have closed since 2010. They're fighting the same financial headwinds that have challenged many rural communities, along with the lack of Medicaid expansion in Tennessee and most southern states. WPLN's Blake Farmer has reported on a lot of these closures, but now he's tracking one that has done what no other has, reopened. He's here to talk about whether we can expect more reopenings. Hey, Blake, how's it going?
Hello, Khalil.
So, you've been following a company called Braden Health since the start of the year. They've acquired a handful of hospitals between Memphis and Nashville. What have they been doing out in Haywood County?
Yeah, and sure, just to orient you, Haywood County is between Jackson and Memphis, actually a little closer to Jackson than Memphis, but about an hour outside Memphis. The hospital is right just outside the town of Brownsville, which is the county seat there in Haywood County. So we've done some stories about this company from Florida, Braden Health, acquiring these hospitals kind of in West Tennessee. They started with one in Henderson County. Now, it was already running and doing okay. They also have one that was really struggling in Houston County, but it never actually closed. So it is way different to actually reopen a hospital. And the one in Haywood County closed in 2014. We're talking 8 years ago. It was sort of the early wave of rural hospital closures. Why is it news? Well, it kind of had this soft opening last month and should be fully licensed in the next 60 days or so because they've passed all their state inspections.
What do you mean by soft opening? I'm familiar with that in terms of restaurants, but hospitals?
Well, it's kind of my term, not theirs. But it's a little complicated, but they right now they're really just operating this thing that's called a rural health clinic, and it's think of it as like an urgent care, and it's you walk into the ER and there's a door over here, and you can go into the clinic. And that clinic actually will continue operating once the ER is officially up and running. But in rural areas, a lot of people really just need primary care, like help managing their diabetes, let's say. And they don't necessarily need an ER, which can be, as we know, really costly. So even after they get fully up and running, they can divert people over to the rural health clinic if it's not so serious. But for now, that is all that is going. But it's enough to at least see, are the patients going to come?
So how's it going? I assume patients have gotten used to driving to cities for care. Are they coming back?
Yeah, I was there for the first day. I kind of even felt bad because, it was a soft opening, like I said. We weren't doing a big ribbon cutting, but we had to wait till the afternoon until the first patient arrived. But they did come, and I checked in with them, and they are seeing more than a dozen patients a day now. And that is more than the new owners planned for at this point since, they don't have that ER up and running yet. But for some perspective, when the hospital closed, they were admitting like just one patient a day. So, even before it closed, this hospital had obviously lost the faith of the community.
It seems like this would be a really difficult time to reopen a rural hospital, given hospitals everywhere are struggling with staffing. So who did they get to work there?
Well, to my surprise, many of the employees were there when the hospital closed 8 years ago. Those folks have come back, at least some of them. They were, ready to work closer to home, even if that meant taking a risk on this new hospital that obviously had so much struggle over the years. Janine Ng started her lab career at the hospital as a lab tech and left before it closed in 2014. And she's one of the ones who's back running the lab. I asked her why she returned.
It's been difficult, and there have been a lot of days when I just felt like Is this going to work? Is this going to work? And then something just in the back of my head keeps saying, yes, just give it a chance. We're going to spread our wings and we're going to fly. And I believe that with all my heart.
She said she's actually trying to convince her sister to come back, too. She's a radiology tech, but she moved into a new career after the hospital closed as a teacher. But in a way, they're trying to get the gang back together. And from the folks I talked to, they're really glad to not have to drive to Memphis or Jackson to go to work anymore.
So what are the odds this is going to work out and this hospital won't be at risk of closing again in the near future?
Well, it's certainly not a sure thing. I mean, there's a reason the prior owners pulled out. And by the way, that company is based here in near Nashville in Franklin, Community Health Systems. But they pulled out and, they couldn't even sell this hospital. They gave it to the local government. That just shows you, how much value it possibly had in the healthcare business world. The new owners, Braden Health, have not paid much of anything for these hospitals that they're taking over, but they are making some sizable investments in them. And the company believes there is a way to run rural hospitals that can still be profitable even without Medicaid expansion in the state, which you hear so many hospital operators blaming their troubles on, at least in rural areas.
Now, you mentioned that it was just one patient the day before closing. What will it take to earn that community trust back?
Well, that's what they're working on. What are the things? Some of them are small things. They kind of had this project that when they were renovating this hospital, which took millions of dollars, they decided they were going to save all of these tiles that were put up all over the lobby and the front entrance of the. They realized that these were very special to the community because people would come in and ask about them. They had handprints from all the kindergartners who'd come through the local schools. You can imagine this kind of thing in a hospital. It had, they sign their name and have the year. And folks, delivery drivers would come in and say, wait, you saved the tiles? You still got them? I want to see if I can find mine. So it's little things like that, trying to say, hey, we're going to be part of this community. But then also just providing care that people would actually prefer to come to this hospital rather than drive to, let's say, the hospital in Jackson, which because of all of the hospital closures in West Tennessee, it's now got one of the busiest emergency departments in the entire state.
Wow. So, new owners, help me understand why this company would be able to run the hospital any better than the previous owner.
I mean, that is a very good question. Braden Health, which was started by an emergency physician in Florida named Bo Braden, he kind of has this thesis that if you offer the right services that will get plenty of use, but not the services that will lose a bunch of money, and you also stay on top of wasted materials. He's big on making sure their supplies don't get out of date and have to be thrown away. Also, he very on top of trying not to be overstaffed, which is often a very big problem when you're dealing with these low numbers of patients you might be seeing each day. They kind of say it's not a secret sauce, but there's a way to make it work. And they're not doing this on the cheap. You wouldn't walk into these hospitals they're renovating and think they were anything less than you see, the nicest places around. They've invested in new technology. They're really big on making sure they have the latest CT scanners, which are very expensive pieces of imaging equipment. But they say one of the reasons that patients have to be referred to bigger hospitals is because you don't have the technology to do, let's say, a CT scan, which you use for all sorts of things. Could be head trauma, could be pneumonia. But they say this way they'll be able to keep more patients in their hospital and have them admitted, which means they will have to pay a bill at some point, but it'll keep the hospital afloat rather than just being an emergency room that sends everybody to the big city.
So will we see more rural hospitals reopening in Tennessee?
Well, Braden Health has plans for at least one more. Decatur County General Hospital is now theirs, but it is currently trashed. I mean, it is a total wreck, literally has been flooded out, part of it. And so it is going to be a while before that thing actually gets going. There are other companies, or at least one more company that's working in Tennessee. There's one called Boa Vida that is working in Jellicoe, Tennessee, and I hear they're looking at other hospitals as well that are closed and could potentially reopen. But essentially, communities are desperate at this point. They're willing to basically give away these hospitals so long as it's the community, the local government that owns it, so long as someone seems to have some experience and will commit to running them as hospitals. But for what it's worth, the big health systems, even those that specialize in rural hospitals, and there are several that are based here in Nashville, they're not going after many of these facilities. Often the economics, they're pretty black and white when you look, on the ledger. Even being the only hospital in these towns, in these counties, if the population is aging, the local economy is sputtering, it means you don't have many working folks with private commercial insurance, which is really what hospitals need to thrive.
So before you go, that reminds me. We've got this company working around West Tennessee. Is this related to the Big Blue Oval city announcement where Ford is building this massive battery and truck plant?
That was pure luck for them. I mean, they had no idea that Ford was going to make this massive, nearly $6 billion investment. In fact, it's in Haywood County where we're talking about here. They started buying these hospitals in 2020 before any of that came out. But you're exactly right, though, that kind of thing where you've got this growth in rural communities where you're going to have new jobs, all sorts of jobs that are going to be tied to that. That is going to help support this hospital in Haywood County, perhaps even the ones that are farther away from the new plant. Of course, it sort of also shows how it can be this vicious cycle, because a hospital is also one thing a community needs for big industrial employers like Ford to want to even agree to build a big factory somewhere.
Blake Farmer is WPLN senior healthcare reporter. Blake, thanks for your coverage on our rural hospitals. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We have to take a short break. When we come back, we're bringing you a rebroadcast of our July episode on the unionization movement at coffee shops in Nashville. So stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. The pandemic has made a lot of us look at employment differently, as people have reevaluated their relationship with work. Things like working at home, livable wages, and good healthcare benefits have become increasingly important factors when considering taking a job or staying in one. The coffee business is no exception. This spring, employees at the popular Three Brothers Coffee on West End voted to unionize, and they aren't the only ones. My next guest says she tried to get a similar effort off the ground at Barista Parlor. Sochi Cruz Lopez, welcome to This is Nashville.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you with us. So tell me, how long did you work at Barista Parlor?
Yeah, so I was at Barista Parlor for about 7 years.
How would you describe your time there? Did you enjoy it?
I did. Yeah, I really did. It was a, fun place to work out with everyone, like with the coworkers. It was a good time.
So in December of last year, you began to have conversations with management about wages. Why?
Yeah, so it actually started in October when we started having conversations. Well, I started having conversations with upper management about wages because this has been an ongoing topic amongst all the baristas, In the past, we've had people leave. We had people work double jobs trying to sustain themselves and support themselves, or work doubles, and it just didn't seem fair,
Were those conversations you had, were they encouraging?
With the coworkers?
With management?
With management, they always seemed like they were telling us or telling me that, hey, like, whatever you want to discuss, talk about, like, it's okay to come up to us and talk about it, So it seemed like they were receptive, but the conversations never went anywhere.
So you did begin to have other conversations. Who were you having those with?
Those other conversations were with the coworkers.
So what happened next?
So I started hearing about how other people at shops were feeling a similar way, and they wanted to change things and take action, So I started reaching out to other people from other shops and kind of having meetings, outside of the shop and talking about ways that we can change or ways that we can approach collectively, all of us approach upper management and change how wage has been at the shop for so long.
So in those meetings with all the different locations of barista parlors and your colleagues, were you all specifically talking about unionizing at that time?
We had discussed to unionize for sure. Yeah, we were exploring all of our options and which option would be the best one for all of us,
So after a few meetings with your colleagues, something changed. Can you tell us what happened?
Yes. So we like, as far as the coworkers, like we were all feeling pretty encouraged and we were really for this, and somehow, management found out about our meetings, our collective ideas and everything. And I got fired for it. They, out of nowhere, just one day, I had a call from the operations manager at Barista Parlor. He calls me. He's like, hey, for reasons of disrespect and insubordination, we're letting you go effective immediately.
Now, did you ever have any incidents? You get written up sometimes jobs, when there's an incident happening with an employee, there's a process of writing people up. And after a great number of them, then they find out reasons to let people go. Have you ever had anything like that happen?
Not in the 7 years that I was there. No, I never had any disciplinary action. I used to manage one of the shops, So I had been there for a long time and I had a good relationship with upper management. So the allegations of me being disrespectful and insubordinate just didn't add up.
So how did you feel when upper management called you and told you that?
I had a feeling that this was going to happen. When I started to get a kind of a sense that they might know because I had been pushing for this for a while. I didn't know that they had been told, but the conversations lasted for so many months that I felt like I was kind of on thin ice. So I kind of felt it coming. But in that moment, I was trying to process everything that happened and what was going to happen after that firing, with everyone still at the shop. So my first, response was like, oh, are they going to fire anyone else that were at the meetings? But I was also really mad, after it happened.
I do want to say that we reached out to Barista Parlor about today's show. They reject claims that you've made, but in a statement, they've told us, quote, unionization is an employee right and Barista Parlor respects that right. We have not and would not attempt to curtail that right. So, since you've been gone, have you kept in touch with your former colleagues? And if so, what's their reaction been to all of this?
Yes. I'm still very good friends with a lot of them. And, we talk every now and then just to catch up. And they're still upset about everything that's happening as far as wages go at the shop. Barista Parlor, the company, gave a company-wide wage increase of $1 to everyone like a few weeks after I was fired. But that's not enough for people. They're still upset.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. We're talking this hour about labor unionizing efforts within the local coffee industry. My next guests have been instrumental in the unionization of employees at Three Brothers Coffee in West End. I'd like to welcome labor organizer Anthony Fern Welsh with Universal Workers United and Paige McKay with Rock Music City, a chapter of Restaurant Opportunity Center United. Thanks to both of you for being with us today. So, Fern, let me start with you. You were a barista at Three Brothers Coffee, right?
Yeah.
So what was the impetus for you and your colleagues to unionize?
It was all about a bunch of conversations that we were having, like ongoing conversations about what is the status? Like, do we feel appreciated about our work? We're talking about living wage, things in Nashville going up in price. I actually worked here in 2018, 2019, came back at the end of 2021 and didn't get a raise, but like cost of living was noticeably higher. I realized I didn't come back to the same to the same living standards. So I'm like, I can't survive off of this. I'm struggling off of this. So beyond that, just like looking at different things looking at different instances where people felt mistreated, ultimately, like a group of us, we're in agreement. Like we want to see some change, not just for ourselves, but like the standard to change for the industry as a whole.
So what motivated all of you to kind of step up and help out?
Realizing people don't really go, they don't come to work with a peace of mind. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you feel, but I know a lot of people, they get payday, payday comes and then there's still stress.
Yeah.
There might be even more stress on payday, just knowing, like actually doing the calculations, like, oh, tips weren't that much, or, oh, I got hurt and I don't have insurance, and we're all, aging. So I'm 26 now or 27 and I'm not on my parents' insurance, these things adding up over time.
In those conversations, how much did people talk about the pandemic kind of opening up their minds or their views to some of these things that they would like to even out and make better for themselves?
Yeah. The pandemic played a huge role. All of the workers at Three Brothers, in a major way, the pandemic shapes how they're viewing their work experience right now, as far as they walked through the struggle, I guess. They walked through the shop closing, shutting down, the uncertainty, people or owners having to file, I think, PPUs to get some kind of more assistance for their workers, and having to go with that uncertainty. And ultimately, I just wanted to support them through that. Like, I didn't walk with them through that part, but I wanted to support them in that.
Now, Paige, you helped start Rock Music City, and you all specialize in working with the service industry. What makes labor organizing within the service industry unique?
Yeah, I did. And in the service industry, restaurants and coffee shops were long thought of being impossible to unionize, impossible to organize, because there's such high turnover rates and there's such small amounts of loyalty to different restaurants. But the loyalty comes to your coworkers. It comes in most industries, in a lot of industries, you see loyalty to the actual job. But with us, I think it makes us unique that the loyalty you often have in a restaurant, especially in a place like Nashville, where the hospitality workforce is the largest labor force in the city, our loyalty comes from our other workers. So once you build that solidarity and that community, people want to unionize, not just for themselves, but for each other. And I think that's the piece that's missing from a lot of organizers' minds.
Well, how are you all able to address those very specific needs within the service industry?
Because we're in the service industry. The people working in ROC Nashville are still working in the restaurant industry. I've been in it for almost a decade, and I still actively am in restaurants. My main job, I work 30 hours at a restaurant every week. So I think when you're in it and you continue to be in it, you can only organize these things when you understand what they need personally. Those needs change. And once you leave, it's easy to forget, to no fault of anybody's. But that's why I think ROC is able to organize something that was considered unorganizable.
Now, in my past careers, I've worked at the service industry as a bartender, as a server, and I know that it's sometimes very difficult to get everybody on the same page, even to decide a time to meet. How do you all tackle that challenge?
Digital organizing.
Okay.
During the pandemic, it became the only way to organize, and that's when I became part of the organizing community. And I was trained as a digital organizer because we had COVID. There was no other way to meet. And I think that coming to people where they're at and the capacity they have, because our capacity changes every day. And in late stage capitalism, where we are right now, especially, our capacity is going to change every single day as people that are working paycheck to paycheck and don't have healthcare and don't have childcare and don't have any other means of getting help. Our capacity changes. It's never going to be the same. So constant communication, checking in with people, utilizing group chats, utilizing text messaging, utilizing Zoom, utilizing other different apps to keep people involved, expecting people to show up in person to a meeting. To me, it seems a little less considerate of them because it's just not going to work that way. You have to diversify your communication with people.
Now, Xochitl Cruz Lopez is still with us. Xochitl, from your experience, does what Paige is saying, does that really ring true?
Yes, for sure. Everyone's first, but going back to the community aspect, it is very true that the way that it's different from coffee community or the service industry compared to other industries is so true. We're all working pretty close together, so that aspect's true. And then trying to get everyone together working in the service industry, as you know, it's hard with everyone's schedules, but the way that communication and, digital and internet has made it possible. It's a great thing. So, yeah, I agree.
It's interesting that this movement is happening at coffee shops. Fern, what is it about the coffee industry that makes it a favorable kind of environment for labor organizing?
I'd say coffee shops, the coffee industry as a whole, like it adapts a lot. You hear terms like third wave coffee. There's these distinctions between like Starbucks or these shops that, where they have a little bit more personal touch to them. And I think a lot of the workers in coffee shops, like they hold to that. And you give people that free reign, like how far does their expression go? It goes beyond just like, does our shop look cool, but do we also feel valued at our shop? Which, I think coffee is going to take it far. It goes from like chili here in the States, like there's a lot going on around the world within coffee industry.
Do you feel that coffee shops themselves have this image of being politically progressive?
They definitely do, but I feel like that's just like the generation, like who's growing up in it right now.
Explain.
We're growing up in the time we're in. I'm 27, so I think I work with a few people who are a little bit older than me, and I work with a lot of people who are younger than me. So you've got this like, we grew up with the internet, we grew up with computers in our houses and our phones, and we understand social media a little bit more. So we understand that representation and how to flex that muscle a little bit more. And when we're asked like, what do you need, what do you want, like it is a part of us to go to our phone and maybe ask a question, put it out there into the world and see what the response is like. And that's kind of what it materialized into.
Now, Soshi, what's next for you now?
Next for me?
Yeah.
So I'm a student. I'm in school, and so doing school and just continuing to speak about what I'm doing. Like I've said, this movement is so much greater than me, or, it's not just about Barista Parlor and what happened to me. It's about making sure, but like just spreading the word that other workers have rights, especially in this state, or in the South.
What are you studying?
I am studying neuroscience. I'm a pre-med student.
Okay, so real quick, so as you move forward, considering what you said, in your medical career, how are you going to use these experiences to kind of guide you in the work that you do in the future? Yeah,
there's a lot of, still a lot of inequality, even with students. And if anyone out there who has been going through, who's gone through medical school, I haven't yet, but I have a few friends who are in medical school. There's still a lot of inequality there with not just the pay discrepancies, but in terms of workload and conditions and everything. So I will continue to advocate for all of us.
That is Soshi Cruz Lopez, former employee at the Barista Parlor, who says she was fired for attempting to organize her colleagues. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about labor organizing in our region and invite a representative from the AFL-CIO to the discussion. Are you currently a member of a union? Are you fighting to organize your coworkers? Tweet us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. While the push for unionization at coffee shops is a fairly recent phenomenon, labor organizing in Tennessee goes back quite some time. What has it looked like in the right-to-work state? And what does right to work even mean in today's environment? Labor organizers Anthony Fern Welch and Paige McKay are still with us. Fern, so let's start here. What does right to work mean exactly?
Right to work means that workers in the workplace who maybe are uncertain if they want to be a part of a union or not, they have an option not to. So for example, we have a union vote. Somebody votes no, they don't want a union. They still reap the benefits that the union workers fought for. But also, that's like the face value version of it, like at a deeper level. It helps provide cheap labor. Like here in the South, and we've got a bunch of right-to-work states, this little bunch of right-to-work states, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, it goes on. Right to work protects business owners, really. It gives them something to use to mobilize people against each other, to pit workers against each other.
Okay, Paige, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I definitely can. I feel like with right to work, as we know, it like Anthony said, like it only benefits the owner. It gives the owner opportunity to fire anybody without cause, without explaining why. They could claim it was anything, but you can usually pretty well see what it is. So in a state like Tennessee, you see a lot of people getting fired for things like being trans or being gay in a lot of establishments, and they can claim it, you showed up late 2 weeks ago. And it's very hard to fight because we are in a right to work state. And as far as unionizing goes, it does absolutely cause workers to not see the benefit of being in a union if they're going to get the benefits anyway, which we would like everyone to have the benefits regardless. We would hope that no one had to fight for the very, very minimal requirements we're asking of businesses when we're unionizing.
I'd like to bring in my next guest. AJ Starling is the secretary and treasurer of the Tennessee chapter of the AFL-CIO. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So now the AFL-CIO has been working to protect workers' rights for nearly 70 years. In your opinion, what are the benefits of union membership?
Well, it's a lot of benefits. First, you have a voice on the workplace when it becomes issues of safety, working conditions, vacations, salaries. We normally negotiate for those particular benefits, and it gives the worker a voice. It feels like they're part of what they are working for.
How long have you been a part of the AFL-CIO?
Gee, a long time. I would say 28 years. I've been in this movement, and I've loved every 28 years of it.
So you've got this personal, long-term perspective on this. Tell me, what has labor organizing, what has that movement looked like in Tennessee historically?
Well, it's been tough. We've had to struggle. I do know when I first started in this movement, we had a lot of plants here in the state of Tennessee and throughout the country. And when NAFTA was passed, a lot of those companies moved, which brought our capacity down a lot. So it's been hard to organize in the service industry a lot.
So talking about right to work, what kind of challenges does it present to do this kind of organizing in a right to work state like Tennessee?
It's tough, but as I listened to the other guests earlier, it's all about personal choices. It's all about, do you want to be part of having a voice in the workplace? When we have those issues come up and people want to be recognized and be valued, it becomes an easy tool. In Tennessee, I think workers are mistreated. They're mistreated in a lot of ways. As the young lady said earlier, just getting fired for no reason. We need to stop that in this state.
Now, how has the pandemic kind of informed the new work that you all are doing at the AFL-CIO? How has that affected it?
Well, basically, it's brought out those concerns. It's brought out that voice that wasn't heard always. Getting fired, getting sent home, not getting a paycheck when they should have got. It's actually created the voice that you were hearing earlier from the other guests.
So, speaking of the pandemic and a lot of other things in the world, we are in a great moment of change in a lot of ways. Have you all had to adapt what you do to keep up with the changes in the labor force and the kind of things that workers today are looking for?
Absolutely, we had. When I started in the labor movement, we did mostly mailings and the phone calls and the door knockings and things like that. Now we've got internets, we've got Twitter, Facebook. We've learning to adapt and reach out to people through those mediums, which has caused these increases for people to hear what the labor movement is about. And a lot of times people think it's all about money. Well, we care about people. We care about working conditions.
Have you had expressed interest or jump in interest since the pandemic?
Yes, quite a bit. As a matter of fact, we've had several organizations that have affiliated and formed since the pandemic. I would say from the state level, we've had at least 5.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil A. Colonna. We're talking about the labor movement in Tennessee, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. You know, I think many people would say that having more than one labor organization group is a good thing for all workers. More people can receive more help and support and find the approach that fits them best. Paige, tell me, what sets Rock Music City apart in your approach to labor organization?
I think that what sets us apart is that we are staying in the community, and we have more of a community aspect to that. Not that, I mean, every other group does too, but we specifically are in the restaurant community. And that's such, like we've talked about, such a hard group to unionize. And so I think being more specifically focused on the hospitality industry and actively working in those restaurants with them is what has set us apart so far. And I think there are other groups that are focused on, you know, other groups, bigger groups, and they're in those communities. So I think that's why it's so important that we're here now, is that these groups need someone that specifically is involved with them.
You know, the hospitality industry has such a strong, very strong union in Nevada, but they also make up a larger percentage of the overall workforce in the entire state. What makes Tennessee different?
I mean, probably, I guess simply that there aren't as many big cities, right? So, you know, in Nashville specifically, the labor workforce, the hospitality labor workforce has a stronghold on this entire city. And really, if you think about it, Memphis and Nashville's labor and hospitality has a stronghold on the entire state, because all of the money that the state is getting out of taxes is coming out of Nashville. And the people making that money are restaurant workers. And when restaurant workers start to realize that, that's when real change can happen.
Now, AJ, do you all work with Rock Music City?
Yes, we have a good relationship, and through our state organization as well as our central labor councils. I do know the central labor councils work really close with these organizations.
How important is it that multiple labor organizing organizations kind of have good relationships with each other within a particular region, a city, or a state?
Well, I think it's always great to have great relationships. That way you find out what particular issues that are necessary or important to the workers, the individuals. And we look at the whole aspect of the human aspect in a job, not just, you know, a lot of times people think that we're looking at money and so forth. We're looking at working conditions. We're looking at the health issues, and we're looking at just a gamut of things. So we can represent that family as well as that individual.
Now, Fern, what makes Universal Workers United different?
Sorry, it's actually Unemployed Workers United.
Unemployed Workers United.
But it is universal. What makes it different is it started off as Unemployed Workers United, a response to COVID-19. So kind of like the question you asked earlier, like about, you know, COVID and like organizing, a lot of people realized that they had no backing. They had no support. I think if unions were in place before COVID, a lot of people would have seen themselves with, you know, a paycheck. At least during some of COVID, they would have seen themselves with some protection. But what makes Unemployed Workers United different is the fact that it is adaptive. Like, it's come out of that phase of being a place. It's come out of that that pandemic phase, and now looking at workers and their experiences right now, like recognizing that we need to lean more into like this digital age and how do we bring people together. But yeah, I think its adaptation, its adaptability is probably the biggest thing. The name is probably a little bit like misleading, but we're here to raise the standard for any industry, whether you're employed right now or you're not employed.
Now, AJ, looking back, the civil rights movement and the labor rights movement are pretty intertwined, right? That's correct. Tell me, what's the significance for you personally? Personally, it's all in one. If I am going to have civil rights, I've got to have workers' rights as well. And to the labor movement, if you go back into the reason why Dr. King came to Memphis, it was a labor strike. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't always know that, but it was a labor strike. And he came to represent those individuals and support their right to join a union. Now, I believe, Fern, you got inspired by parts of the civil rights movement, correct? Tell me about that.
Well, I'm from Florida, but coming to Nashville the first time around, just learning about the city's history, learning about the sit-ins that were taking place downtown. You can go check them out at the downtown library. They've got this civil rights room, and if you go into that room, they've got a bunch of books, they've got pictures, they're pointing at all these different figures, but they also have some documentaries where they like talk about the anatomy of a protest and the preparation that goes into organizing, and not just like here are the facts, but here's like where we need to be mentally as we're facing, the people against us, the people who are the union busters, what have you. And like AJ was saying, people don't realize that those things are intertwined, like the civil rights movement and the labor rights movement. But it is, fighting capitalism here.
Mm-hmm. Now, AJ, you're a longtime union member, and you've seen a lot of change over the years. As we move into the future, where all of us are looking at employment and the nature of work differently, what should we keep in mind?
Well, number one, we should always keep in mind that we're dealing with human beings, and we're dealing with their families along with it. And that's why they work. They work to support themselves as well as their family. Do we need to tweak on how we need to reach out to people? Absolutely. Technology is changing every single day. It's changed probably today than it was yesterday. So we are going to have to learn to use those instruments and use that technology to advance our cause, to represent our people.
How do we do that when people look at unionization as a political situation, as a political divide and whatnot? How do we approach the humanity in this?
Well, number one, with the two speakers that we got today, they're young individuals, and those are the people that it's going to help this labor movement move forward. They're going to do it as sight unseen. A lot of times we can send messages out through Twitter, Facebook, and all the other ways, but guess what? At the bottom line is, do I trust A.J. Sterling as an individual to tell me the truth? And as long as we can continue to always keep that human element involved in it, as Paige has said, we're going to have to go to where people are. We're going to have to learn to get off our horses and and go and say it's a better way, it's a better life through organization.
Paige, how does that resonate with you, hearing what he's saying about the importance of humanity in young folks?
Oh, I totally agree with that. I think I said recently to someone, workers aren't a pawn when we're trying to unionize, because a lot of it does feel like a chess game. And I'm sure AJ and I know Anthony can both agree with this, is sometimes maybe we want to be like, okay, you need to do this next. And maybe they're not comfortable with that. And we have to listen to them. And I agree with everything AJ said. Yeah, we have to remember who we're working with and that they're humans and that they're going to think about different things differently than us. They're going to learn differently than us. They're going to work differently than us. And the workers should be leading all of this. Them and their families know what they need more than we're going to know what they need. And that's something else with restaurants and coffee shops.
What are your hopes for the workers of Tennessee?
My hopes is to see them liberated. I hope to see them all with the power. I hope to see them seeing the profit that they're producing and to know their rights and to be able to fight for those rights and to get involved with organizing in a sooner manner. I hope to see them get more involved in these groups and see where they can get plugged in.
Fern, what are your hopes for workers in Tennessee?
My hope is that we see each other a little bit more clearly. And then just an example, if we all walked around with our hourly wage written on our chest, I think that we would realize that people really close to us are struggling a lot more than we would realize. We would realize that difference in class. We'd realize that difference in daily life. And I hope people could get fueled off of, just like that awareness of each other and willingness to fight for each other.
That would be a very interesting day if everybody walked around with their hourly wage on a T-shirt on their chest in this town.
That'd be crazy. We'd have to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah, that would be something downtown. Now, AJ, looking ahead to the fall, right to work is on the ballot, right?
That's correct.
What can we expect?
Well, it will be on the ballot along with 3 other constitutional amendments. I think it will be right after the governor's race, and it'll be right on the ballot. we are going to fight this right to work amendment. We will have a lot of information going out in the near future, and I mean real near future. Our membership's going. We've got other folks that are on the ground pushing to vote no on Amendment 1. And what we need to know about it is educating the general public. The word right to work, it was said earlier, it's such a misnomer. And we've got a lot of education to do. And that's our effort, to educate people. Because if this passes, it goes into the Constitution. And it's a piece of legislation right now. And it wasn't put in the Constitution when the forefathers written it.
Now, Paige, you got 30 seconds. What are your hopes for the future of labor organizing?
I hope to see it adapt with the people it's organizing.
I love that. Fern?
I want to double down on that, and I hope that word mutual aid, or that phrase mutual aid.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see more of that. I want to see that done more strategically. We're in a big fight together. So how can we do that more cohesively?
I really appreciate having you all on here. Thanks to AJ Starling with the AFL-CIO, who was joined by Paige McKay with Rock Music City, and Fern Welsh of Unemployed Workers United. Thanks to you all again for being on the show today. Now, before we go today, we wanted to come back to coffee. Coffee Black specifically. It's a storefront in Memphis that Renata Henderson and her husband Bartholomew Jones opened back in 2020. They call themselves the Anti-Gentrification Coffee Club. Inside, well, it looks like your living room. There's a black couch, big yellow chair. The business is a celebration of the African roots of coffee and a reclamation of coffee in Black culture. There's a slogan written on their cups. It reads, "Love Black people like you love black coffee." As Renata told our intern, Doreen Chernecki, they decided that Black people needed a coffee space like this, by the community, for the community.
We have a lot of people in the community who are just like, we needed this, we love this. And specifically, we have people even from outside of the community, Black people, who are just like, this is the type of space I was looking for, where I can look around and see other people who look like me. I hear music, I smell incense, I see pictures. Like, it's not like this whitewashed walls and silence and all of this, but I can actually be comfortable here. It actually feels like my living room. Black people specifically don't feel empowered to have that be a part of who they are and a part of what they do on a daily basis, as in homage to where it came from. My husband, he went to school in Chicago, and when he was doing like his all-nighters, he would get like the darkest coffee they had or whatever. And so for him, he would go into these spaces and not see anybody else that looked like him or could relate to his experience. And so that's what started kind of the questions around Coffee Black. This was right after George Floyd happened, and my husband posted the words, "Love Black people like you love black coffee," on his social media. People said, "I would love to see this on a shirt." And he was like, "Okay, cool, we can do that. Who else would be interested in that?" He put that on a shirt. I had a Cricut cutting machine. We got some blank shirts. And we said, okay, we're gonna try this. We were really close already with our Neighborhood Development Corporation, and they said, hey, we got a building for you guys. We didn't want to contribute to gentrification. And so we said, well, we don't really want to do that. So the conversation became, if you guys don't do it, somebody who doesn't care will. And so we said, okay, we'll try it. It's going to be a club. It's not a shop. We don't want anybody to feel like they can't come in here and get a coffee at any point. We have a first sip program for people who can't afford it, that you can get your first sip free. And some people are on their 15th sip at this point, 75th sip, and it's still free because we don't want to hoard something that was meant to be shared as our own. That was a big thing for us, is making sure that as a community, we share it, because that's what coffee was meant to be.
We want to thank everyone who tuned in this hour for this rebroadcast. We'll be back tomorrow with a fresh new episode for you. This is Nashville is a production of WPLN News and Nashville Public Radio. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Our producers are Steve Harush and Rose Gilbert. Our digital lead is Anna Gallegos-Cannon. Michaela Elias is our technical director. Our executive producer is Andrea Tudhope. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. The conversation doesn't end here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. Find us on Instagram and tell us what you want from our show by filling out our quick survey online. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekulona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.